that I do feel that there are two types of laws. One is a just law and one is an unjust law. I think we all have moral obligations to obey just laws. On the other hand, I think we have moral obligations to disobey unjust laws, because non-cooperation with evil is as much a moral obligation as is cooperation with good.
But no, when I got the news that my dear brother Barack Obama, President Obama, was going to put his precious hand on Martin Luther King Jr.'s Bible, I got upset. And I got upset because you don't play with Martin Luther King Jr. and you don't play with his people. And by his people, what I mean is people of good conscience, fundamentally committed to peace and truth and justice, and especially the black tradition that produced him. All the blood, sweat, and tears that went into producing a Martin Luther King Jr. generated a brother of such high decency and dignity that you don't use his prophetic fire as just a moment in a presidential pageantry without understanding the challenge that he presents to all of those in power, no matter what color they are. No matter what color they are.
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around.
I get upset. People say, oh, Brother West, there's Smiley and West hating Obama. No. We just loving the tradition that produced Martin Luther King Jr., and we're not going to allow it to be in any way sanitized, deodorized, and sterilized. We want the subversive power to be heard. That's what made me think when he said he's going to put his hand on that Bible.
Don't let anybody take your manhood. Be proud of our heritage. As somebody said earlier tonight, we don't have anything to be ashamed of. Somebody told a lie one day. And I come here tonight and plead with you. Believe in yourself and believe that you're somebody. As I said to a group last night, nobody else can do this for us. No document can do this for us. No Lincolnian Emancipation Proclamation can do this for us. No Kennysonian or Johnsonian Civil Rights Bill can do this for us. He must move down into the inner resources of his own soul and sign with a pen and ink of self-assertive manhood his own Emancipation Proclamation.
This was what my mother tried to do. She made it very clear that in spite of these conditions, you are as good as anybody else, and you must not feel that you are not. And this was her way of saying you should not have an inferiority complex. Now, this is very difficult because, I mean, even though you say this in words, it's very difficult for the child not to develop unconsciously this sense of inferiority, because he lives every day in the midst of a system which stares him in the face saying you're less than, you're not equal to, and the tendency is to develop this sense of inferiority because of the existence of the system. But I don't think I ever felt a conscious sense of inferiority. I always felt from the example and the words that my mother had given all along that I was somebody.
And I would hope the President means what he says when he says that there should always be room for dissent. And we come to a tragic period in our nation when we equate dissent with disloyalty. I believe firmly that it is necessary to have these moments of dissent in order to challenge something that may be leading the whole nation down the wrong path.
Do you care if you have lost favor with Mr. Johnson?
Well, that isn't, I guess, the most important thing to me. The important thing is that I not lose favor with truth and with what conscience tells me is right and what conscience tells me is just. I'm much more concerned about keeping favor with these principles than keeping favor with a person who may misunderstand the position I take.
Long after people forget what has been said in this court, all the words that you've heard from witnesses and lawyers, and long after they forgotten about accounts that they've read about this case, they're going to remember what was done. They're going to remember what action you took, what decision you came to. You have got to understand the monumental importance of your decision. You're going to forget everything I've said, everything defense counsel has said here, everything the witnesses have said. They're going to remember one thing: the ruling of this jury, the verdict of this jury. Because you have heard evidence that has never before been put on in a court of law. People in the United States of America have not heard this. The masses of people in this country or the world have not heard this. They've heard snippets. They've heard edited clips on various documentaries and programs. But no one has heard the detailed evidence that you have. That is why your decision at this point in time is the most significant decision that will have been taken in 31 years in terms of this case. But when you look at the wealth of evidence that has come forward, you understand how this case has been conducted, and you understand how it's been covered up. And when you see how unresponsive elected officials and government has been, and how complicit they have been, you can come to no other choice. Governmental agencies caused Martin Luther King to be assassinated. They used other foot soldiers. They caused this whole thing to happen. And they then proceeded with every powerful means at their disposal to cover this case. This is a conspiracy that involves, and that's a nasty word. People insult, people in this country who use the word conspiracy. Nowhere else in the world, as Bill Schatt told you, is it viewed that way. In Italy and France, you have conspiracies taken for granted because they've lived with it so much longer. But remember that there were 39 daggers going into Caesar.
And when I finished sharing with them the last hour of Dr. King's life, or hurry, but that gave me the wonderful privilege of spending the last hour on earth. 3 preachers in a room, Abernathy, King, and Kyle. And we spent that last hour together in room 306 at the Lorraine Motel. The press is always curious, and writers, what went on? What did you talk about? I say, we just talk preacher talk. What preachers talk about when they get together.
Y'all pay real attention
and all
to what
that.
you're fixing to hear now.
About 5:45, we walked on the balcony, and he was talking to people in the courtyard. He stood here and I stood there. Only as I moved away so he could have a clear shot, the shot rang out. Thank you. I turned around and then knocked him back on the balcony.
Listen. Oh. Wait, listen. Listen. 30 years later, this brother never realized he would slip and say that. Do you know what happened when you sitting in a jury room about a conspiracy and this piece of film is introduced? He stood here, I stood here, only as I moved away so he could have a clear shot. The shot rang out.
The other thing is that a man of conscience can never be a consensus leader. He doesn't take a stand in order to search for consensus. He's ultimately a molder of consensus. And I've always said that the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and moments of convenience, but where he stands in moments of challenge and moments of controversy. And I would take this position even if I didn't have a majority of people agreeing with me now.
We're asking you to send a message, not just right or wrong. That's important, that you right or wrong and that you allow justice to prevail once and for all. Let it prevail, let justice and truth prevail, else the heavens fall. No matter what, let it prevail. Let it come forward. And we're asking you to let that happen. But in addition to that, we're asking you to send a message. Send a message to all of those in power, all of those who would manipulate justice in this country, that you can not get away with this. Send that message. You 12, represent the American people. You are their representatives with respect to justice in this case. They cannot be here. The media will keep the truth from them forever. You represent the people of this land. You must speak for them, because your verdict of conspiracy in this case, your verdict of liability for the defendant and his other co-conspirators, means history is rewritten, means textbooks have to be rewritten, means the actual result of this case and the truth of this case now must come forward formally. On behalf of the family of Martin Luther King Jr., on behalf of the people of the United States, I ask you to find for the plaintiff, find that conspiracy existed, and that those conspirators involved not only the defendant here, but we're dealing in conspiracy with agents of the city of Memphis and the governments of the state of Tennessee and the United States of America. We ask you to find that conspiracy existed, and once and for all, give this plaintiff family justice, and let's cleanse this city and this nation of the ignorance that has pervaded this case for so long. Let the truth reign in this courtroom once and for all. Thank you very much.
Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, But I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
I don't think our loyalty to the country should be measured by our ability to kill. I think our loyalty to the country should be measured by our ability to lead the nation to higher heights of democracy and to the great dream of justice and humanity.